Good evening, good morning, and good day to everybody around the world, all 7 million of you. And we have the distinguished Dr. Dennis Fiorini. He is a long-standing practitioner of Atlas Orthogonal chiropractic in the USA, and he has been the president of the Sweat Institute, Sweat Foundation, Sweat Institute of Research. He'll clarify the name for me. I should know, but it's late here and it's early there. I hope he's had breakfast. Maybe he's Italian, so he may have had his coffee already. Welcome, Dennis.
Well, thank you very much. I'm absolutely honored to be on your podcast and your new YouTube channel, Joe. And you're one of our great assets in the Atlas Orthogonal program, and I'm very pleased to be up at. Well, I got up about 5 a.m. our time, and it's 6:34 right now our time. So we're pleased to be here, but it's summer here, so we got warm weather coming. I think it's winter there, isn't it?
It is. It's a little chilly, and you're in beautiful Florida, right?
Yes, Tallahassee, Florida, which is basically, if you look at Florida, kind of looks like this. We're right there.
Yeah. The Tallahassee Bridge.
No, that's the Tallahatchie Bridge is what you're talking about.
You mean all these years? It was I was singing it wrong.
Tallahatchie. Billy Joe McAllister jumped off the Tallahatchie Bridge,
and it was Tallahatchie.
Tallahatchie, yeah. I thought that too. I was singing that for years as well, and then I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So,
yeah. Anyway. Well, we can end the podcast on that now, Dennis. Thank you very much for coming.
I'm glad we clarified something of worldwide importance.
And that's the beauty of, sometimes you get wound up in chiropractic and you're obsessed with, but we do have multifaceted personalities. But right now we're going to hit on Atlas Orthogonal and what is your passion about AO? What if you had to tell me one thing that drives you to go to work, what is it? What is it that drives you in Atlas Orthogonal?
Well, in Atlas Orthogonal is a vehicle for me. Okay. I would say the fact that it's a chiropractic technique, and the fact that chiropractic, it works. You're going to take pressure off of the nervous system, and the body will do what it will do. I graduated from Life University or Life College back in the day in 1989. Dr. Matt Sweat and I would sit on the front row every time that Sid Williams spoke at assembly. And regardless of what anybody thinks of Dr. Sid Williams, he did so much for chiropractic, but he would get up there and he would say, chiropractic is like gravity, and he'd drop his car keys. And he said, it works every single time. And that's what gets me up every morning, is I know that there is going to be, I think our office saw about 90 people yesterday. And I know that when I get the Atlas right, it's going to work, regardless of what anybody thinks of chiropractic, regardless of what anybody thinks. When I adjust them with the instrument and they go, that's it, I know it's going to work. That's what gets me up every day.
And where do you see upper cervical was the mainstay of pharmacology for, I don't know, 30, whether it's 20 years at least. Why do you think it's kind of diminished in acceptance by chiropractic in general, or is that okay with you?
So we've been speaking to a lot of students lately. In fact, this weekend, Dr. Angelo Colavita, is teaching the first half of the basics at Sherman College, and we haven't been on that campus for several years. And then I'm going in a couple of weeks to teach the second half. there's a big interest in upper cervical chiropractic with the students, at least here in the United States.
Wow.
I do, we do get pushback, and I'll tell you one little story. So I was up following Dr. Roy around several years ago, and there was a patient in there from Nashville, Tennessee. Now that's probably a 3 or 4 hour drive from Atlanta, and she was there with her husband. And I was like, well, they just came in because they heard of Dr. Sweat and they wanted to get she wanted to get her Atlas adjusted. Well, talking to the patient, I found out, and talking to her husband, I found out he's a chiropractor. And he is a full spine chiropractor, and he does, basically diversified. And the sad thing was, he said, I would love to learn this technique, but it's way too late for me. The guy was only like 30.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I was like, why do you say it's too late? He said, well, I've got, I see 100 patients a day. And if I just do the flying 7, 70% of them are going to get well.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
I mean, that was real sad to me, because like putting the lines on the x-rays, talking to the patient, putting the lines on the x-rays, and then adjusting them with that instrument, and getting them right, and having the post x-rays to show that they're exactly right. That means everything to me. And there's no better satisfaction in the world, and there's no bigger disappointment than to look at those post x-rays and them not be exactly right. But I couldn't let that sink in. So I think that the biggest thing is just easier to do what the school taught you, rather than having to go to weekend seminars to learn something else. Whether it makes you a better doctor or not. It's just we get busy with our time. I think that's something that that the pandemic has shown us, is that, what, sometimes you're going to get some, if you don't take the time, you're going to get the time somehow, right? And I can't understand how someone can go, I'm just too busy. You got to do continuing education anyways. Why don't you go ahead and do this, learn a better way of adjusting the Atlas, and get there. Now, I will say that in our town, and I hate to ramble on, but in our town, there was 2 upper cervical doctors in this town when I first. There was one before I came, okay, and he was a NUCA practitioner, Dr. John Dudd. You may have met him. Anyways, he was around. Yeah, he was around a long time ago, but he was a NUCA practitioner, and he came to several of Dr. Sweat's seminars. But he said, I got to find an easier way to do this. And I said, Doc, I found an easier way to do this. I'm going to get you up off the ground. You're not going to have to be squatting down to check legs and all of that stuff. And you're not going to be sweating over the patient. You can get it done with the instrument so much more specifically and so much faster. But I think that just the fact that it's difficult. It sounds easy, okay? What are we trying to do? We're trying to get the head, we're trying to get the eyes level and the center of the weight over the center of the head. That sounds pretty simple. And as you and I know, it just isn't that simple. No. It's a simple concept, but the mechanics of it are difficult. And I think that people just don't, I think the doctors just don't have the intestinal fortitude to go through all of that. Again, basically going back to school.
Yeah, I think that happens on many levels. I mean, food comes to, or coffee, you can drink instant coffee, which is fine. And then you get that, well, I want to brew it. I want to, a new machine, and I want to get a nuance about it. And that's that little, that 80-20 that makes something a little bit, it's like, eating to live or living to eat. You can almost
Sure.
eat anything to survive. But when you have that little bit extra, you then get that uniqueness that's usually called a miracle. Now, Dr. Fiorini, Dennis, what would be your greatest miracle you've ever witnessed in practice?
Okay, that's a great question. Now, up until
I bet there's a few.
yeah, we've only been in practice since '89, so we're and I continue to practice, right?
Yeah.
So I think that the biggest, what's odd, and you've seen this, I'm sure, is when a patient will be, you get them adjusted, and the patient says, can adjusting the Atlas help my lower back? And I look back in the chart, and they never mentioned any lower back pain or anything.
Mm.
And you say, well, of course it can. We get the eyes level, center of the weight over the center of the feet. The spine will get up underneath the head, because the main function of the spine is to support the weight of the head, according to the biomechanics book. Anyways, and you say, oh, well, of course it can. Why do you ask? Well, I had really bad lower back pain, and you adjusted me with that instrument, and it's gone. Mm. And so that's pretty neat. But I'll have to say the biggest miracle is when a patient came in, and this will be in the next book of testimonials that the Sweat Institute has put. By the way, I'm the president of the RW Sweat Foundation. The Sweat Institute is actually the clinic up in Atlanta.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. But this patient came in, young lady, her name's Danielle, and I had been seeing her. I've seen her probably for about 14 or 15 years. And about 2 years ago, she came in, and she said that she was having some pain in her neck, and she said that her sugar. She's a type 1 diabetic. Mm. And she has an insulin pump, but she said, and I haven't been able to get my sugar to stabilize. And I was like, I said, so you're having some neck pain, but you're here because your sugar wouldn't stabilize. She said, yeah, I noticed like about 10 years ago that when I was in adjustment, my sugars always stabilized real well. And then as soon as I went out of adjustment, my sugar was all over the place, and I couldn't get it stabilized. And so diabetes, type 1 diabetes. And she knows that when she gets her Atlas adjusted, she can control that a lot better. So and some people wouldn't call that a miracle because, you didn't cure the patient. No. But I consider it a miracle, and she considers it a miracle because her body we already know that she's impaired to a certain amount, okay, because of the type 1 diabetes. But the fact that she can control it when she's in alignment, but can't control it when she's out of alignment, that just shows the miracle of the human body and what it can do. So I think that's my biggest thing. That's my go-to. We all have the patients that had migraine headaches for years, and drop episodes and dizziness. The reason I got into Atlas Orthogonal is because I had vertigo, terrible vertigo, that was caused by a chiropractic adjustment. Oops. Unfortunately. Yeah. Well, I was dating a blonde student. She was a student. Now she got a little bit ahead of me, and she was in the student clinic, or in the big clinic. And I was dating her, and she wanted to go to lunch. And I said, well, I got this headache. And she goes, well, let me take you into the student clinic. I'll adjust you, and then we can go to lunch, right? So she takes me in the student clinic, and I lay down on my back on one of the tables, and she takes my neck and goes, rip and rip. Headache completely gone. Talk about a miracle. I loved that. I was like, holy smokes, complete relief. I'm like, I'm so glad I'm at Life College at this moment right now, because I can't wait to do this to somebody and to help them just like this helped me. And so I get up off the table, and I was so dizzy, I fell back onto the table. All of a sudden, you go from, it's like hitting a brick wall. I was like, this is the greatest thing in the world, to I am going to quit and go into real estate with my dad, because I never want to do this to somebody.
Wow.
So anyways, this is a little bit of a long story, but anyways, so I kind of got my bearings, still was there though. So, going to chiropractic college, you have kind of contact with, you have the opportunity to have contact with some of the greatest chiropractors in the world, right?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And so I went to see several of the doctors there. Nobody could get rid of that dizziness. I saw a couple of doctors on the outside, field doctors, and they couldn't get rid of, they could never touch that dizziness. It never got better. And in fact, over a period of about 8 weeks, it got worse and worse and worse.
Wow.
I was holding on to the walls at Life College there. I couldn't stand, I couldn't walk. So I had already become friends with Dr. Matt Sweat. Matt would come to get me at the apartment and take me to class because I couldn't drive.
Wow.
Finally, he got sick of it and said, you know what? I'm taking you to see my dad, Dr. Roy. And I said, well, I can't pay much. He goes, don't worry about it. He'll let you pay over a series of, over a series of months or whatever.
The next 20 years.
Yeah. Well, it was, I'm still paying him, still repaying him. But so that dizziness was so bad. If I sat up in a moving car, I would throw up.
Wow.
So I had to lay down. Now he had an 80s model RX-7, Mazda RX-7.
Nice.
So how do you lay down in a Mazda RX-7? Well, your head's in the back, yeah, and your feet are in the front. And he had the stick shift there. And so we're driving up 285 there, and he's trying to drive, and the sky's going by, and I'm actually getting dizzier. So I go to see Dr. Sweat, and this was back when they didn't have the big building. They had the building up the road. I think you may have seen that one, but yeah, it's their old house is where it was. Oh, on a crawl space. So every time Dr. Sweat hit that foot pedal, it reverberated through the whole office. So Doc looked at me, examined me. He had the x-rays taken. He showed me the x-rays. He said, Dennis, he said, you got a vertebral artery problem. And I believe that. And to this day, I know that's what it is. So anyways, so he adjusts me. Joe, it was like for 8 weeks, I had a veil over my face. Everything was kind of cloudy, right? It was like a San Francisco day, right? So everything's kind of cloudy and foggy. As soon as he adjusted me, my vision cleared up. Before I sat up from the table. And I sat up, and the dizziness was completely gone. Not just a little gone, it was gone. And I turned and looked at that instrument, and I turned and looked at Dr. Sweat. And I'm going to get closer to the camera. And I said, I will never give one of those manipulations ever. And I want to learn how to do this. And he said, I could teach you how to do this. And to this day, now that was, I think Matt and I were in fourth quarter, maybe third quarter, because he wouldn't let us take the basics yet. And I got through chiropractic college with Matt, and I both got through there without ever having to do a cervical manipulation like that.
Yeah.
And let me tell you something. It's like the Beatles. It was the perfect storm.
Yeah.
It all came together right at the perfect time when I met Matt, and then he took me to see his dad. It was just the right time because I got into the research department, was able to adjust patients in the research department, did my whole clinic in that research department because they had an instrument in there. It wasn't the AO instrument, but it was an instrument we used to call slow mo because it was a forward probing, and it was like chink like that.
Whose instrument
So
was that?
now that was an instrument that Life University was developing.
Life on the cervical, or
yeah, it was Life cervical. And then they finally did redo that instrument and put it into the clinic and actually had our stylus on it, but it was still forward probing.
Right.
But we were able to do our entire clinic through the research department, and able to do a lot of research with little kids with seizures and that type of thing. So very blessed. That's my long story. Dr. Sweat always says, no, take as much time as you want with that story. So
indeed. And from that, give me some unique, because I'm asked about Roy Sweat, and you know, Matt's great too, but you know, Roy's the elder, you know, and
he's the last, in my opinion only, he is the last giant in chiropractic.
Well, that's what I want to know. I want to know, sure. Give me some feel of Roy Sweat so that people who are never going to meet him, or, you know, because they're in Australia or whatever, what are your impressions that make, because I sat through a lot of his lectures and I found I could hear the same things over again and not tire of it. Now, tell me more. What did you say? He's a giant, the last giant, and go from there. Give me some impressions of.
So first of all, being a giant in chiropractic, you think of, who do you think of? You think of BJ, and it's BJ. It's not BJ. It's BJ. Very important. You got BJ. You got Virgil Strange, right? Fred Bard, Sid Williams, Ian Toughness, Gonstead, right? Pierce Stillwagon. I mean, you could name them all.
All the greats.
Yeah. And you had Grostic, right?
Yep.
And then you have Roy Sweat.
Yeah.
Now, they're all gone except for Roy.
Yeah.
They're all gone.
Yeah. Well, not many. We've got Arlen Furr.
Yeah, Arlen Furr. Yeah, another one.
So there's not.
I finally met him. Yeah, I finally met him actually, Arlen Furr. Arlen. I'll tell you, and then I'll get back to your question. But I was talking to Arlen Furr. I said, I am big friends, and Dr. Roy Sweat is my major mentor. And Arlen said, he kind of chuckled, and he said, well, he said, every time I'm in Atlanta, I like to try and have dinner with Roy. And at the end of dinner, Roy always says, Arlen, I'm so glad that you were born, and thank you for proving everything I already knew. So
that's interesting. Yes.
Yeah, but that's Roy. And the way you can see, and you've probably seen this, but I've been so blessed in the fact that, I mean, I've sat at his house, sitting there at dinner with he and his wife and Matt and Warren and Whitney and other doctors. and seen the way he thinks. And he has got a laser sharp, one track mind. All he cares about is humanity and how he can help humanity through understanding the craniocervical junction, or as he says, the cranio-atlas junction. Yeah, better. And you can see him, you can actually see the synapses in his brain. When you ask him a question and he doesn't answer it immediately, you can see the synapses going through his brain. And the great thing of him as an instructor, now he's told me, he said he's gotten to the point that he enjoys, almost as much as he enjoys taking care of patients, he enjoys teaching doctors like you and I how to do the Atlas work better. Yeah. And it's absolutely amazing. Now, as an instructor and working at his clinic, completely working off my bill, right? When he would come in and you would watch him adjust a patient. I remember the first time I ever saw him have a patient on the table and swing the Y vector out to about 40.
Oh,
yeah, I remember like it was yesterday. And I think Angelo was standing in there with me. I can't remember if it was, I think it was Matt, because it was before Angelo was around. And I looked at Matt and our eyes got as big as saucers. And so we walk out in the hallway and we said, Dr. Sweat, why did you swing the Y factor out to 40? And he looked back at us and he went, and he walked away. He didn't explain it. The thing about Roy is that he wants you to figure it out. He doesn't want to just give you the answer. So he's going to let you marinate in it for a little while. And what we figured out was, as we went and saw him do it several times, we figured out what actually was going on was the patient's head wasn't completely at 0.
Mm.
And so when we looked at the vectors and it said anterior 10 and he took it out to anterior 40, it was because her head was at 30. And so he just added the 10 to where she was.
And that's
right.
True, yeah. Some people cannot place their heads ideally.
Exactly. And so, and that's really, and if you, and we're doing a little bit of thought on that. And, you know, we want them to be at 0. You know, as when we teach the basics, we tell them get the head at 0. And that's going to help you get 65 to 75% of the patients well. But the problem is that when you get those complex cases that can't get their head there, the main thing is to get their head their head and neck as relaxed as possible, and then preset the joints so that they'll move to where you want them to be. So if you're moving their head around and getting them into a position that they're not used to being in, or they're not comfortable with being in, then they're going to tense up and you're not going to be able to adjust them as well. You're not going to get the legs to come down as well, and you won't get them to adjust and stay in alignment as long as you'd like them to be. So 80% of my patients hold for months or years. It's the other 20% that you have a little bit of difficulty with. And sometimes that's the reason is you're just, when you're adjusting them, they're not in a state of, I don't want to get, you know, too transcendental about this, but they're not in a state of homeostasis and relaxation where they can accept the adjustment, right? And that sounds a little woo-woo, but that's just how it works in my mind. So if we can get them into it, if they can be kind of comfortable on that table, and we can get them adjusted with as little force as possible. As you know, the instrument is about 5 to 6 pounds solenoid. If we can get them an adjustment with as little of that pressure as possible, then they're going to accept that adjustment better, and they're going to hold the adjustment better.
So that's one thing, is that what you're saying is that Dr. Roy is a true teacher. He allows for that process of you coming to that. What about the way he teaches formally? What is it that's so gripping about him, other than having this knowledge? What is it? Is there something in Roy that engages you? And sometimes I can only equate it with listening to a really wise old man. But I thought that about him when he was 50 something. He was, because we were obviously, you and I are the same age, I think. And he was always a wiser older man. But what is that thing that just mesmerizes about? I know it's not that Southern accent. Got to be more than that.
It's a little bit of that.
Oh, no, don't say that.
Well, I thought you had a Southern accent.
Well, that's it. Because some people listen to me when I was at Palmer and they go, "Oh, wow, you cool accent." But you get over that. And what is it about Roy? Is it must be innate or invisible, but he has a unique delivery. I mean, you spoke about Alan Furr, all these great people. One of my mentors was Vern Hagen. Had a way of engaging you. So what is it about Roy? He's so engaging. What do you think?
I think and just off the top of my head and in my thinking, he connects not only intellectually, but he connects here, right here. And he gets right to you. And when he's looking at you, you're the most important person in that room when he's looking at you. There's a lot of the great politicians, they say, with Ronald Reagan, even Bill Clinton, they said that regardless of how you feel about their politics,
absolutely.
They say everybody that met them said that you felt like you were the only one in the room, that he was talking directly to you. Now, the other thing is, and again, getting into that whole thing where he lets you figure it out, lets you marinate in your question for a little while. When Matt and I did our first basic 2, which is now, by the way, basic 3 is X-ray X-ray analysis. So basic 2, we get back to the office, and it's me and Matt and Dr. Sweat. And he's always told me, "Call me Roy." And I said, "Dr. Sweat, I can't call you Roy." But anyways, so he gets us a set of X-rays, and he puts us in his office with the view box. And he said, "I want you and Dennis," he tells Matt, "I want you and Dennis to draw the lines on these X-rays." So we're excited. We just had the class, and we're picking the points and everything, and we get it done, and we think, this is perfect. This is the greatest X-ray analysis in the history of man. So Matt and I did this one set of X-rays. So Matt's sitting there and he's going over a few things. He goes, "Go get Dad." Because I've had the wonderful experience of Dr. Sweat not taking the place of my father, but being like a stepfather.
No, I think that's true. A lot of us feel that way. Yeah.
So I run in, and Dr. Sweat's sleeping on one of the tables. He's in the room where they have the old C-arm, and it's got 2 black and white TVs on this C-arm, and he's got a hanger on one of the TVs, and he's got a football game on on the C-arm TV, which was hysterical. So I shake Dr. Sweat. I said, Dr. Sweat, I said, we're done. And he goes, all right. And he gets up. And now in those days, and he hates when I do that impression, by the way. But in those days, I mean, he jumped right up and came running in. Now you got to remember, when I met him, he was my age when I met him.
Yeah.
So he was 57, 58 when I met him.
Yeah.
So he comes running, but I look at myself in the mirror. I said, I'm not as old as he was. But anyways, he comes into the room and he sits down, and he's sitting there and takes one of those crazy erasers, and he starts erasing. Starts looking at the points. And he gets up and he says, and he walks out of the room, and we hear him as he walks out of the room. He says, it's not right. So Matt goes, well, what did we do wrong? And Matt and Dr. Sweat says, ask Dennis. And he looks at me and he says, what did we do wrong? And I said, I don't know what we did wrong. I said, my recommendation is let's erase the whole thing and just do it over again. So we did that. It took us 45 minutes. Oh, no, I'm sorry. An hour and 45 minutes to read that first set of x-rays. And finally, the satisfaction of Dr. Sweat sitting down, erasing a couple of things and going, all right, it's good enough. So that part of his instructing, that one-on-one part where, and I don't know if you experienced this, but he's so much harder on the people that he knows can get it right. Okay. On people that he looks at and they're just not getting it, he is a whole lot more lenient on those people. But on what is a great honor is when he's hard on you. When he takes a set of x-rays and throws them at you and says, that's the worst analysis I've ever seen. Or when you're taking x-rays and he looks at him, he says, take all of these over again. There's rotation, there's tilt. Take better x-rays, be a better doctor. And he was real tough on Matt and I, real tough on Matt and I. He did not give us 1 inch. You don't get 1 inch by being loyal. It helps being loyal, but you don't get 1 inch from being it. But I think that's what it is. And it is a little bit of that Southern charm. It really is, because he tells the stories of when he was taking classes from Grostic and Gregory was helping, Ralph Gregory was helping Grostic with the seminars. And someone asked him not too long ago when we were all sitting down in the seminar room, on a Saturday night, and he was, he's drinking a Budweiser, right? Yeah. A Budweiser or 4. And someone asked him, did Grostic do this? Did he sit with everybody? And he said, oh no. He said, Grostic never did that. He said, Grostic we always held him up to he was the standard we were trying to fit to. And so Dr. Sweat said that he and the Humber boys and McAlpine and all of those guys would sit and read x-rays and talk about x-rays. But the great thing about Dr. Roy is he connects, he sits there with us when we're not in a class, and he answers questions for us. It's the old, and I'm a Christian, and when there's a scripture in the Bible about Saul of Tarsus, that he learned at the feet of this great instructor, Gamaliel. Gamaliel is his name. And I feel like that's what we're doing. We're sitting at the feet of the master, and he's just telling us these anecdotal things that permeate us and let us know that, hey, listen, you can help humanity. And like you said at the outset, there's what, 7.8 billion people on the planet. Every one of them at least needs to have, every one of them needs an Atlas examination, and almost every one of them need to be adjusted. I've come across in 30, what is it? So it's 29, it's 2021. I've been in practice for 32 years now. I've come across 2 people that didn't need to be adjusted.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
In my practice, they just didn't need to be adjusted. And just that marching order, in my opinion, is what I tell the students today. I say, listen, we need more people doing this. I think we've got 15 or 20 for that elective at Sherman College, which is, like I said, being put on this weekend. Actually, Angela will be starting in about 45 minutes up there in Spartanburg. But we've got to get more doctors. Our directory only has 200 and some, is what Dr. Sweat said the other day, of people. These are doctors that keep up with the program, not just, there's been many that have taken the seminars and but they don't continue in it.
No.
And I tell people, I say, listen, and I'm gonna praise you a little bit. Joe comes, Australia may as well be another planet, right? To get to the United States, it may as well be another planet. And if Joe can come to the seminars,
and I can't wait to get back. I can't wait to because that's the other thing. And I'm sure all techniques have this too, whether you do AK or SOT,
right?
When you're with people that are different, I mean, there's a lot of different people in the program, but we're all there, united, and it's almost a relief. It's like posting something on Facebook and wondering who's going to get pissed off. Whereas when you're at the AO seminar, it's not that we all agree on everything. It's just like we're in the family right now.
We agree on something. We agree on something. Right?
Yes, exactly. We agree on basic fundamentals. And like you say, religion is similar too. If you're Christian, I remember a book, it was an Indian thing, and it was called At the Feet of the Master. So it doesn't matter whether you're Muslim. I was talking to a Muslim chiropractor, and he had such a great dedication, no different to ours. And that's the point. We believe in the fundamentals, and like you said, we do Atlas Orthogonal up, then there's the upper cervical, and then there's chiropractic. We're all in this together.
Well, it's like Sid Williams and the keys. You drop when you drop something, it's not going to go up. It's going down.
And look at what Sid Williams built. He's a man who could piss off as many as wanted to kiss his feet, but he was chiropractic. He was the embodiment of it
to the very core. And I will say that Life College, Life University, last time I was there, and I had talked to some students at the last advanced seminar back in May, and they said Life College Life University is kind of canceling Sid Williams, which is sad. They're getting rid of a lot of the videos of him and those assemblies. We had to go to assembly. I don't even remember if it was every week we had to go to. I don't remember exactly, but I remember him speaking at those assemblies quite a bit. And I think they started out just as feeding his ego, but the nuances and the wisdom that he put on us, the fact that everybody, if you talk to anybody, about Sid Williams, you say, what do you remember about him? And they take out their car keys and they drop them.
Yeah.
It's the simplest explanation of chiropractic, and chiropractic working, regardless of regardless of what you believe. It works, and that's really what makes it different than religion. I mean, BJ could have made it. DD, I think, wanted to make it a religion back in the day.
Well, I think that was Reggie Gold.
Oh yeah, well, that could be too. I didn't know him very well. I knew, now Irene was his wife, wasn't she?
No,
Was Irene Gold?
No, that was,
they weren't related.
No.
Oh, okay.
Reggie did. He was brilliant. Like listening to Guy Reekman, he could command attention. But he said, well, let's make it a religion so we can be outside of the scope of certain things, whatever.
Sure.
But it's
no, I never heard that.
But then someone else said, chiropractic's a great profession, but a lousy religion, and that's probably true.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it's a lot like it's a lot like that. But again, I always come back to those keys. And I know when a patient comes in and they say, well, I still have some pain over here. And I'm like, well, listen, there's a lot of things that cause pain. Okay. I know that when I adjust you, your body's going to do its best to heal whatever's going on in there. Okay. And the body is constantly, this is where we're quite lucky. Okay. The body is always trying to heal. Okay. Regardless of what kind of potion or lotion or, or CBD or whatever that you're putting into your body, or chiropractic or whatever, your body's always trying to heal.
Yes.
Always. So it's always trying to get to that point. So if we can allow those 700 and some trillion cells, which every one is controlled by the nervous system, if we can get its control center working the way that it's supposed to, then barring there being some kind of a congenital DNA stuff going on, that body's going to heal as much as it can, and the body's going to do so much better. If you look at my neck still is very military. I've got a C5, C6 disc that's degenerated with some osteoarthritis. I've had chiropractic since 1982, 81 or 82.
Wow.
And all I can say is when someone says, well, look at your neck, you've had chiropractic for 40 some years. And I say, can you imagine what it would have looked like without chiropractic? And that's what my thought is all the time. Dr. Pete Fernandez, another, in my opinion, another great giant in chiropractic, in the business side of chiropractic. He's my business mentor. And I looked at some x-rays of his, and he's got this big scoliosis. And I said, Dr. Pete, I said, you're 70 some years old. You've had chiropractic for 50 or 60 years. Why does your spine look like that? He said, can you imagine what it looked like without chiropractic? He's an interesting case in that he had polio, and they thought he was going to die until he started getting a chiropractor that his mom met in the grocery store. They were both French. She started talking to her in French, and she said, my son is in an iron lung in a hospital in Fort Lauderdale. And this chiropractor would come in and adjust Dr. Pete's neck. Now, albeit it was diversified type of, she might have done Gonstead or something. But anyways, so she'd come in and adjust him, and lo and behold, his lungs started working. And literally a chiropractor saved his life, literally.
Yeah.
He was going to die of polio.
Yeah.
So, and I forget where we were going. I mean, we're getting pretty philosophical here, but
well, we're gonna wrap it up, because I hope that we speak again, Dennis. Any
All
final thoughts?
Well, I think that you need to go to bed now. So, final thoughts. Chiropractic is great. It is the most wonderful thing that I've ever discovered. AO is the penultimate chiropractic technique, in my opinion. And I know that there's probably a lot of doctors out there that will completely disagree with me. I've got doctors here in Tallahassee. I tell patients, you can get 150 chiropractors that will completely disagree with me. But I know that if we get the Atlas in adjustment, and very simply going back to what we talked about at the beginning, if we can get the eyes level and the center of the weight over the center of the feet, the body will heal as best as it possibly can.
Yes.
I will say that we need the help. We're never run down the medics. We need their help. It was an interesting story, and I won't go into it too much, but back in the day, Dr. Hugh Crow came to call Dr. Sweat in the middle of the night. He was having this terrible abdominal pain. And Dr. Sweat said, "I'll meet you at the office." They met at the office. Dr. Sweat did the rebound sign, and Dr. Crow came off the table. He had appendicitis.
Wow.
And Dr. Sweat said, "You need to go to the hospital, to the emergency room." And Dr. Hughes said, "No, I just want you to adjust me." And Dr. Sweat finally said, "Okay, I'll adjust you, but when we get you adjusted, we're taking you to the emergency room." And he was having appendicitis, and he had to have emergency surgery. We need the medics. We need the surgeons. We need the neurosurgeons. We need the neurologists. We need all of these guys that so that we can help the body to heal. And then if they need something else, we can send them to another type of practitioner so that they can have the best of all the worlds. We're in this together. We're not in this separate. It's kind of like if we separate, we're going to fail. But if we come together and work as one, we're going to get those patients better, and it's going to be better for humanity. And ultimately, that's what we want in the end.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a good place to stop, because that's the meaning of life right there. Dr. Dennis Fiorini, I'm glad we met, and I'm glad we spoke, and we will speak again.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Joe. Have a wonderful evening down under. And we're going to get out and enjoy the pool today. You get out and enjoy some skiing and some parkas.
Thanks a lot, Dennis. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy.